what's going on, everybody? Welcome into another edition of the Voice of Camp Nathaniel, coming at you right here from the campus of Camp Nathaniel in Emelina, Kentucky. I am Stephen Bell, and with me, as always, is the ever cacophonous...
A what?
That was your cue.
Okay, this is Lee Sharp, guys.
Yeah, there we go.
I'm not sure how I'm supposed to respond to the word cacophonous. I'm not so if I'm supposed to be flattered or
Well, I mean, it depends because do you know what
or insulted.
Well, do you know in musical terms? Do you know what a cacophony is?
No.
Okay, a cacophony is when basically everyone in the orchestra starts playing their instrument as loud as they possibly can with no direction whatsoever. It's a lot of noise.
All right, I'm going to take it as a compliment because that sounds wonderful.
Okay, but here's the funny part. I went to our good friends at ChatGPT and I asked them to give me a list of adjectives with funny meanings to it. And when a cacophonous got brought up, I Googled it too, and it said like almost like a discombobulated array of sounds, meaning back with cacophony.
Okay.
But the meaning that ChatGPT gave me was sounding like a cat chorus. So, I mean, come on, take it for what you will.
I think you're just describing my everyday life.
I think I am.
With four small children running around my house. It sounds like a
chorus.
Like a cat chorus all of the time.
Oh, man. Hey, guys, we've missed you. It's been a couple of weeks. We've had some fun with Roy Hodson going back and talking about just the history of Camp Nathaniel. And we're going to revisit that in the months to come. Roy's going to come back and be part of the show with us. But man, it's July 1st. Mm-hmm. And we are actually recording this in the middle of our annual high school week of camp. Yes. We're right smack dab in the middle of camp season. And with that, we get to bring in guests every single year, people who have been to camp tons of times in the past, and people who have never been to Camp Nathaniel before. And we've
got somebody new.
We've got somebody new, man.
He agreed to come here.
Now he's here,
somehow
and he can never leave.
Convinced him to come.
Hey, please welcome to the show, Mr. Ian Dunaway.
What's going on, gentlemen?
Man, how are you?
I'm good. It was like an Oregon Trail ride here. Several people died of dysentery, but at the end of the day, I made it, and that's all that mattered to me.
No, we're going to talk a little about your background, how this kind of worked out, and we got you here.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm not expecting necessarily any of our regular listeners to just flat out know who Ian is.
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks a lot. We have an unknown. Shouldn't know him.
It's all right, man. It's all right. But see, this is what this is for. We get to introduce you to our people.
I love it.
And so let me ask you this first of all, before we get into your background, what are your initial impressions of Camp Nathaniel?
Man, I like it.
Keep in mind, a lot of people who listen to this really love Camp Nathaniel. So let's.
It's the worst place I've ever been.
No, I'm kidding. What you got?
A lot of things. I've done student ministry for a long time. Mm-hmm. A lot of things come to your mind when you think camp, and when you think a camp that exists year round. But when I came in, it's beautiful. Yeah. I did not know that we were. You said we're in the mountains, but man, we are smack dab in the mountains.
You are, man.
Yeah. Day 2, I looked over. I was like, those just aren't tall trees. That's a mountain beside them.
That's right.
But it really, when you talk about it, 1, it's beautiful. Mm-hmm. 2, it's well kept. But the thing that's been the most interesting to me and what I've loved is the fact that the staff. I'm blown away at the culture that you've built. You had a long time to build it and to set it in, but man. Culture either grows well over time or it grows dysfunctional and normal, difficult things. And so when you come in to see not only that your staff and your families are all together, that you guys work and live together, but also that your staffers are just like legacy staffers that love the mission that you do. It's a really cool and refreshing thing.
Very cool.
I love it.
Very cool. We like it.
It's not to pretend that we got everything right,
We
mess a few things up.
That's for another podcast.
Well, awesome. So let's talk a little bit here in regards to, first of all, tell us kind of who you are, where you're from, and give us the whole rundown of your entire life.
Well,
in like 30 seconds.
In 1 minute flat.
It's the elevator pitch.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh, man. So anyway, I'll give you the long and the short of it. Man, I have I'm a student pastor. Has been my calling and what I've done up until the last few years. And it's kind of, student ministry is one of those things, if you love to do it, like I never thought I wouldn't be for full time, and that would be the one thing I did, but I thought I'd be doing it till it was creepy. And you're like, man, you're like 65 years. It's time to go and
It's time to come on, man.
work with the seniors. And I'm like, yeah, this high school seniors. But you know, I don't think that student ministry is a stepping stone kind of thing.
Yeah.
But what I have noticed is that when I was about 10 years, 10, 11, 12 years into it, I was doing college ministry along with students. And I started to realize, I think a lot of student pastors, if they'll take the mindset that I'm going to flourish where God puts me and then be open, I really noticed that I was starting to grow with the generation I started with. And so that's led there. But man, I've even noticed, I told you this, that when I preach, I think that you preach the gospel clearly to a 6th grader through a 60-year-old.
Yep.
And so if your preaching is clear, it should be good. But I have started to love leading and investing in leaders of students as much as students. And so that's really what I did for years. Didn't want to be in ministry, wanted nothing to do with it other than volunteering and loving the church. I thought, man, I've seen a lot of pastors, go through it. And then God always, like the kid that goes, I don't want to go, just don't make me a missionary in Africa. That's kind of how I felt. And yet God always gives us a heart to do what he calls us to do. And so I have absolutely loved it. I spent about, this is year 18, so just long enough to know that you don't know anything in ministry. But in that time, man, I got to serve and do some really great things. One of the things, though, that led to where I'm at now, I serve at a church as a teaching pastor called G6 Church in Owasso, Oklahoma, which is the Tulsa area.
He's from around Tulsa, Originally from Arkansas, though, but
born and raised in there.
Yeah.
You say elevator pitch; it's a lot to think through.
It is, man. It is.
But one of the things that we noticed was this: the church is more than not at this moment struggles with being healthy. And most of that is just because there's a couple of things that I think contribute to it. But the truth is the church is not a bottom line group. Our bottom line is not money. It's the brokenness of the heart and the human heart. And so it always just read 1 Corinthians.
Yeah. Come on.
It's always a difficult thing, but the struggle is when your leaders are not staying healthy, and you start seeing toxic cultures and toxic shepherds. And so one of the things that we really got absolutely enamored with and called into was, how do we help church leaders? How do we help ministry leaders, whether they're paid, vocational, co-vocational, doesn't matter what, or they work for free. And so that's what we've been doing for about the last 5 years. Is I'm a teaching pastor at G6 Church, but then we have an organization called G6 Allies, and we think everybody just needs an ally. And so Galatians 6 is what G6 comes from. It just means to bear one another's burdens. We have a lot of burden bearers that have nobody bearing their burdens.
Yep, that's right.
So we just focus on 3 things. We focus on teaching, or on pastoral health, on making sure that pastors are taking care of themselves. And then the second thing we focus on heavily is team development. You can have a winning team and lose every time because you don't develop them well. And we want to help pastors do that. And then the third thing is we network pastors. I do cohorts with guys all over the country, and we've watched God really work in safe places where we're doing practical teaching, but along with the fact that there are just not enough support groups for pastors to connect and to talk about the real things. And so we absolutely love it. It's not something that's very common, so it's a little bit hard to explain sometimes. But you're seeing firsthand how vital it is, in the life of pastors, and being able to, we have stronger pastors. We in turn have stronger congregations. We have stronger churches. So, thanks for that. Thanks for pouring into the shepherds, because the shepherds often empty themselves out on a daily basis without anybody pouring into them. So it's a losing game if that's how it is, and we just want to make it work. And
good.
I love that though. Thanks for having me to talk about it.
So
absolutely.
I got to ask here now. That's nowhere near southeastern Kentucky.
Indeed.
So how are we now sitting at this table?
It's only like 4 inches on a map if you think about it.
That's true. I mean, come on, man.
How did we end up sitting at a table across from each other having this conversation? And I think it's something that started with you and Steven.
Well, oddly enough, it started with a podcast. Did it not?
So really, this is a question for both of you here.
I'll go ahead and say this. The first time that I ever met Ian face-to-face was 2 days ago.
That is true. And yet it felt like, we know each other for 3 years.
I know. It's been insane. To make a long story short, and I'll let you chime in here too. I went to seminary with his sister and brother-in-law.
Okay.
And so that's how I got connected with him when we started doing the Nonstop Families ministry. Right before the pandemic started and all that was going on. His brother-in-law reached out to me, said, "Hey, would you like to do a podcast with us so we can talk about Nonstop Families and what you guys are doing for adoptions and stuff like that?" So like, sure, man, let's do it. And so we went in here and we started doing this podcast. And the first time I'd ever met Ian, and then as a result of that, he had been doing some other podcasts in regards specifically related to youth ministry, and having. Between the two of us, we've got almost 4 decades of student ministry under our belt.
So I'll pause real quick. Which podcast was that? Do you all remember?
We do. It's not. It doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah,
we pared it down. But it was called Mad Pastors.
Mad Pastors.
The whole idea was to talk about the things that are driving pastors mad and what makes us mad about it.
Okay.
And so that's what we were spending time talking about, especially family ministry is so big. And then there was one called The T, which we're about to revitalize and call it Brass Tacks. But it was, people don't always have an hour to listen to things, but they got about 10 to 15 minutes. And so it's a 10 to 15. I'm not a fluff guy. I'm a meat and potatoes guy. If you could see now, you'd see I have a meat and potatoes body. But we just
visual for all our listeners.
Thanks for that.
So it's not little Debbie, it's Big Debbie. And so, but that's my, I have the body of a competition eater. And so but that's kind of, we thought, man, in 15 minutes, if we could just talk about the big things in ministry, because honestly, you don't always need more time. You just need to focus on things that matter. And so we got a really good following with that. And then it was like COVID stopped being COVID. We were like, oh, we have full-time jobs now.
We have to work.
So we figured out, but we had people asking, wow, will you send it back? And so anyway, we're kicking it off, and we just get down to brass tacks on everything that we do.
Very cool.
It's one of those things where it's like, hell is hot, time is short, and eternity is long. So let's just get to what matters and move on.
We actually, with the T podcast and Nonstop Families podcast, we actually kind of shared a topic with the same guys, and we utilized that with our own networking. I think it was like the top 10 ways to make sure your child hates Jesus and the church.
It was one of my favorite series we ever did.
Yeah, it was great.
It is. It was just the idea of like, hey, leave Jesus at home if you want to do that. Or I can't remember all 10 now, but they're all on a note on my phone.
Yeah.
My life lives on notes.
Hey, there you go. I understand. Since I've been camp director, I've got so many Post-it notes in my pockets just from people giving those to me, not texting me anything, but just saying, here, remember this.
You're starting to cut down trees around here just to make Post-it
notes.
Just to
make Post-it notes. That's right. So we we were filling this slot of our high school speaker for the week, and these are things that we do way in advance to book our speakers for the week to come, because we know that they've got families, they've got schedules, and so we know we got to get this lined out. So all of this is done in advance, and then we started having this trend that all of a sudden people were contacting saying, "Hey, I'm sorry, I can't make it. I can't make it. I can't make it." I'm like, what in the world is going on, man? So I just kind of threw it out, because these are people that mostly are kind of more local, that they can drive in and stuff like that. And so I don't know, maybe 3 weeks before camp season started, it was something like that.
That's really a year in student pastor years.
It is. So I tell the camp committee, I was like, hey, I got a guy that I've never met face to face, outside of computer screen, but I've heard him preach. He's solid, and he's got about 20 years worth of youth ministry experience, and I think he'd be a good fit. So they're like, yeah, sure, let's go for it. I sent them a link of you preaching, and then they were like, all right, let's see if he's available. So shoot him a text. Next thing I know, he's like, let's do it, man. Let's make this happen. And then voila, here we are.
Love it. Steve and I were in a gang together, and they talked about gang over the Pink Flamingos. It was a big gang. But then that's really part of where our relationship grew. But
so look at that, man.
I love some of the best. So doing speaking and traveling, it's always been a gifting to teach and to preach. It's really kind of hard to start doing that a lot. And so I relish all the opportunities I get as we keep doing that and growing. It helps us do a couple of things. It helps us connect with pastors and ministry partners, but also just encourage people. So it's kind of neat how it goes hand in hand. But I absolutely, when you called me, I was like, man, I'm in. Like I was like, let's buy the tickets and go.
Nice.
But I loved it.
So that brings us up to where we are. Here we are, high school week.
Mm-hmm.
Our theme for the summer comes from Ephesians 5:8. For you were once darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Walk as children of light. Yeah. And you've been doing a phenomenal job of bringing that to light, I guess we would say.
But you say that to all
I
of
couldn't
your
think of anything. I couldn't
Solid
think.
pun.
That's what you tell all of your speakers. So let's dive in a little bit, man. Just kind of give us a rundown of what it is that you are communicating to our high schoolers this week, so that our folks at home can benefit from it as well.
Yeah, well, it's a big topic, but it's a good one. What I love is that you guys you give a lot of freedom.
Yep.
For people to teach within that. And so, but sometimes that's overwhelming. You're like, oh, where do I go with this? Mm-hmm. This was, what is light and identity? And there's so many places to go. And so I'm a huge fan of expository teaching and of always exegetically when it's topical. And so I looked at it and it just seemed to make sense that we just parse out chapter 5 together. Mm-hmm. And one of my favorite things to do anywhere I go is if you can even fit a whole book into a week, that by the end of it, you're like, hey, I know you don't think you can read your Bible for 10 minutes a day, but you read a whole book this week, and pushing it. But so it was really fun to dive into something as deep and as meaty as Ephesians 5. Mm-hmm. I was really struck by the idea that 5:8, it doesn't say that once you were in darkness. It doesn't say that now you're in light. It says you were darkness. Mm-hmm. This is what you were. That was your physical property, almost, and defined you. And then now you're light, but you're light in the Lord. And so we really, other than being in Ephesians 5, the one way we kicked it off was, if you're going to talk about this, what a loaded subject, like light and dark. And, now I used to, I feel old because you used to, like, y'all think about Lord of the Rings? I preached, and there was like, what? I know. What do you think I am? 40?
When did that come out, man? That was like the turn of the century.
But it's the Lord of the Rings.
I know.
So now I got to be like, well, like Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, and you start naming it off. But every time we talk about darkness, we have a wrong sense that it is this massive power that's overwhelming and going to take over. And the funny thing is, it's no different in the first century. Mm-hmm. And so John really kicks off one of my favorite. It was the first in when I was working on in seminary. It was my first New Testament passage to translate from Greek, which was John 1. And so in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And it says that Word was the light, and that light was the life of all men. And so you get to this point where it says it shines in the darkness, but the darkness didn't overcome it. And so when you really go back to the language and you look at it and you start looking at darkness, all of a sudden, darkness, the word, and it almost seems like a face palm moment. But darkness has no power. All it is the absence of light. Mm-hmm. And if that light is Jesus, then Paul is bringing this idea back to us to say, listen, you are light now, but once you were just absent of Jesus. Mm-hmm. And darkness has no power. What it is its absolute absence of the character of Christ, of salvation, of the gospel. And he says, every one of you, because he'll say in Ephesians 2, that you were literally spiritual stillborns. And so you have never even been, you were born absent of Jesus. And I think that we can get that down where we're all not starting from a different place, but we're on the thing, I see now. Darkness isn't something that I'm scared of. Darkness is something I need to bring light into. Mm-hmm. And so really pushing this idea of Jesus is the light that exposes, that he overcomes it. I mean, and we kind of laugh to make it silly. Like when you walk into your room, I mean, there are really dark places, but all you need to do is flip a switch. Mm-hmm. And all is there. And the idea is you become less afraid of things the more that you shine light on them. And so we actually we preached it all in the dark.
We did.
We had kids getting eye diseases, squinting, trying to
take notes.
Scribble.
But we brought a lantern up, and this idea was when I turned that on, nobody in that room, I said, nobody here is afraid that the darkness is going to come and choke out this light. Why? Because we just know that the point is light will always be powerful. I said, you don't serve a God, because John is writing to the Gnostics who are all about light and dark battling. I said, you don't serve a God that battles anything. You serve a God that controls all things. Mm-hmm, and so when he brings light, darkness just flees, because darkness is nothing but him not being there. Mm-hmm. And so as we've moved into this, really Ephesians 5 starts telling us what that light is. Paul is, it's funny. Every writer is so different. Paul is so systematic. You read James, and it's like James has got ADD pi squared and tweeting and just
Everything's sporadic.
Oh, it all makes sense.
This and that and this and that. And another. Look at that rabbit. Look at it go.
If you're an expositor, you read James. You're like, this is good, but you're going, oh man, I got 25 sermons here. I need to do this in 4 weeks. And it's just, but Paul is always so systematic and clear, and you almost can always ask, well, what now? Well, why? And he really kicks the first thing off with saying, listen, you need to be imitators. Because Ephesians is all about our identity. And this idea of you're called to be imitators of Christ. And we imitate what we value and love. And it's why Kim Kardashian has, lines of makeup and clothing that she has nothing to do with other than her name. Why? Because when you're famous, the world imitates what it sees. But you were designed to imitate your father. You were designed, and so I joked that my dad. I used to stand with my legs spread out and my hands, and I still do, with my arms crossed, talking to people because it's comfortable. And then I found out when somebody pointed that out that, man, my dad does that. And then I like that. And then a year ago, my 2-year-old, my wife sends me a picture, and I put it out for the kids, and it landed because these students went, oh, I see it. But he started doing it.
Yeah.
So look at me. And it is a natural byproduct of knowing Jesus, legitimately knowing him, that we would imitate him in that way. And there are several ways that he talks about it. The idea that our speech should point people to light and not darkness. And then what we're going to talk about as we're recording this, what we're going to talk about tonight is this idea that we were designed to be in community and to be lights that shine in the darkness. And so it's not just that you are light, it's that you should be shining a loving light on the darkness around you so that people can see that. And then the next one that we're going to look at is the idea of community. That you're not filled with the Spirit, and you're not like, it's one thing to show. It's amazing how you can have a light the size of my hand on a plane and see it from 10,000 feet flashing in the sky. And when you pick up your phone and you turn your phone light on, it's bright. When you turn on 200 of those lights, it becomes incredibly bright. And we don't live in the Spirit. We don't live the way that we're called to live. We dim our lights. And this idea, if we're not careful to not be in community. And then we end it in a weird way. And so some of your kids, if you've heard this, came back and you're probably like, why in the world did you talk about marriage? Because you end Ephesians 5 is husbands and wives. And the biggest thing, I push this so hard. I push this with college students, with high schoolers. Now, because of the age of students that get exposed to the world, they market to a 12-year-old the same way they market to a 20-year-old. Yeah. And it's becoming important. It's this idea that you will take the character that you have into whatever relationship you are in the future. The character that you have now is what you have to be working on. And so I tell students, we'll tell them this, that your husbands before you ever meet your wives. Your wives before you ever meet your husbands. The truth is, who you're cultivating now is who you are. And we kind of, it's funny with believers, it's funny, and we kind of treat students like, if you live in a dumpster, if you live your life in the dumpster, why are you surprised that you smell like trash? Yeah. If you're only looking in places, for somebody else, you go, well, I thought this was what I needed. No, you were in the dumpster, right? And we should live lives that reflect the fact that we are becoming who we're called to be. And God doesn't care where you start. It's the beauty of the gospel. Yeah. Your starting place has nothing to do with where your finishing line is and where your growth is. And the point is, start where you are and develop that character now. And so you're imitators. You're called to be lights in the darkness. You're called to be in community. And you're called because God has chosen relationships, specifically in here it's marriage, but relationships in general, to reveal who he is to the world as a light. And so he says, you'll know us by our love, for love for one another. He says that you'll, that this idea that husbands and wives are this perfect representation of Christ in the church. And so creating and distinguishing that idea for our students to see that in Scripture, I think is so key to our identities. And you can go from so many directions, but it makes so much sense in the flow of Ephesians 5.
That's good. That's really good.
That was a long summary. That was almost a sermon itself.
No, man, that's fantastic. Because
it's also very practical stuff.
Yeah,
simply because, like, there in reading of my own and whatnot, there's been not that I don't, but relearning the idea that, like, this side of practice, this being of the light, happens in your normal everyday life. You don't have to go to the mountaintop to have some sort of special moment in this one. This happens when you wake up on Tuesday morning and you make some coffee.
It's a dark place. But it's funny how we do that. I don't
a dark
even know.
roast.
Well, that I will enjoy. I don't, but I'm telling you right now, I've been hitting your coffee. The coffee that's left every day.
You have, man. He's sitting here with a coffee cup right now.
I don't want to say that I have a problem. I just wanted to say that some problems I don't deal with. But I love coffee. But no, but it's true. I think that that's the greatest struggle, especially the American church right now, is that we are, and I'm the same way. I just like to teach practically because I don't feel like there's time for a lot else. Mm-hmm. And I think the good teaching is practical. And I think that the issue with all of it is, and doesn't mean I'm not good of a teacher, I'm just trying to not be a bad one. That's my goal.
Yeah.
But with all of that, you're right. It is, I think that it's the biggest struggle of the American church that we are gluttonous with Scripture, and yet we are starved with action and with obedience. And if there's anything we can do, it's this idea that, you may know a lot, but if you're educated beyond your level of obedience, it doesn't matter. And that's the hope, is that we leave people. I think the whole point of Scripture is to draw us closer to God. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if we're separated. It doesn't matter from Him. It doesn't matter if we're here. That my hope would be that as we teach and that the Holy Spirit works, is that every student, every leader, every volunteer just ends up that much closer to Jesus because of the Scripture we've gone through.
Yeah.
And so what you're saying is great. It's true.
Very good. Well, man, hey, listen, we're gonna get ready to wrap things up here in just a second. We got some family camp stuff to talk about coming up next week. But Ian, man, thanks so much for sitting in with us and for being here to minister to our students this week, man. It's been great.
It's an honor to be here. Anytime I can travel and preach, it's I remind myself, I'm just like, man, I get to do what I love, and it's nice to do what you love with people that you love. So I appreciate you. That may have been a little bit weirdly, but
that was a little.
I love you already.
What you all don't know, I'll throw this in. Stephen, you met Ian digitally through the computer years ago, and then you said the first time that you met Ian was right when he came in.
Yeah, you've known in a sense.
I was the one that picked him up from the airport.
In a sense, and you've known him longer. Is that how that works?
In a weird way, there. But the way that meeting worked out, though, is I rolled up my minivan.
Your minivan. That's right, man. That's right.
With 4 kids in the back, and my wife sitting in the back, and I was like, I don't know if Ian's prepared for this. But this is what he's going to get.
I don't know how. I mean, we've been through worse.
What was funny though is hearing that you had an early start that morning. We don't have to get into this. We already said we're going to wrap this up. But he pulls in, and one of the first conversations we have is when he looks at me and said, "Man, I don't know what happened, but it was a 2-hour ride home, and I missed an hour of it because I fell asleep."
I don't think it would have been so weird, except for I was laying on your shoulder drooling by the point. But man, it was just crazy. But I'll tell you, nice drive.
That's good. That's good. What did he sleep through? Did he sleep through like Jackson and that whole? Oh, well, see, you slept through the part that's sometimes the hardest part to get through.
Yeah.
So, wow. Awesome. Yeah, man. Seriously, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
It's an honor.
Hey, listen, if you are listening to the podcast and you want to, hey, you know what? Right now, as this is being released, we have just started family camp.
We have
here at Camp Nathaniel. And if you're listening to this and you're local, you know what the best part is? It's available to you for free. You can just drive in and commute and take advantage of the sessions that are going on, 2 sessions a day. You can take advantage of the activities that are happening every day. You can take advantage, believe it or not, you can come here and eat for free.
You can.
It's nuts.
All kinds of stuff. Riding horses, swimming in the pool, all these things.
Come and be part of family camp. And you know what's really, really cool is normally 4th of July falls during family camp, but this year family camp ends on the 4th. But we figured, you know what, why not celebrate the 4th on the 3rd? Can we do that? Is that? I think we can do that. We're going to do that.
We're going to do it.
So we're going to do
Wednesday night.
And so Wednesday night, we're going to have our annual fireworks show here on campus. And We've even had people show up in the parking lot at the school across the creek and watch fireworks with us on the 4th of July from time to time.
We have.
But this year it's going to be on the 3rd. It's going to be awesome. We invite you to come out, take advantage of family camp going on here at Camp Nathaniel. Commute. We got people. There's going to be 200 people staying on campus for the week, and you can come be part of it. It's going to be a great time.
Yeah, we're really excited. We're excited right now because it's happening as this is being released. But
I'm sure it's great.
it'll be good.
That's right. We gotta record some stuff in advance, and that's why Ian's here. Ian is not going to be with us during family camp, but we're so excited about what he's bringing to our students this week. So with that, man, that's it. We're right at about a half hour. I think we're good to go.
Yep, we'll wrap up this episode, and we'll chat with you all again in a couple weeks.
All right, guys, take it easy. We'll see you soon.